Welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Sanderson Farms Data Dive Show. We have a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to rapid fire through these announcements. As always, chat's open. Kind of want to hear from you all. What do you want to see tonight? What your early leans are, who your fades are, what do you think is going to play here in Jackson, Mississippi. I added a little bit to the description of the video. Normally I have my social media links there. They're still there at the bottom of the description, but I also added my tentative schedule so that you can set your reminders that every Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday evening around 9 p.m., give or take, that I'll be live for your golf information shows and all that stuff. That is the tentative schedule for now. I've got some other things coming up here soon that schedule could increase. To be honest, if there's enough demand for it. So again, in live chat, comments, let me know. Social media, let me know. When other times you might want to see me live. And then finally, last thing as always, all statistics provided by Fantasy National. You hear it every week. It just makes you a lot better. It's plain and simple. So a lot to get into. Let's start digging into the data for the Sanderson Farms. And we're going to start, as I promised, with, there we go, with the tournament fact sheet for this year. And if you were here for the initial research show, you'll notice that this is all pretty much the same. They have updated one note on this tournament fact sheet. That's it. Literally the same yardage, same par setup, same size greens, rough, bunkers, hazards, water hazards in play. They did take out the stimp meter reading, but from last night it was 12 to 13 last year, which classified as lightning fast, not just fast. So interesting information there. So I'll be curious to see what Fantasy National uses or what they officially say is their yardage in Fantasy National, because that's the database that we use to gather all the stats and data here on this show. So I mean, all I can do is go by this. So a lot of, and we'll look at tonight, are using that over 7,400 filter on courses. Whether that truly comes into play or not, we'll see. This course is long, but we'll see if it's truly over 7,400 or if it's, a little shy of that. So, like I said last night at the initial research, I'd always start my data dive shows with the tournament fact sheet, since they're usually not out on Sunday evenings. So yeah, there you go. Nothing changed. Not a lot changed. I should say nothing changed specifically to the course, and the tournament fact sheet was only updated on a note about the tournament. Make sure chat's up here. So with that, going into this is the homepage or whatnot for Fantasy National, and I went ahead and used the DraftKings pricing structure. I normally don't like to do that until the DFS Tactics show on Wednesday, but for whatever reason, it was largely probably due to the fact that the Ryder Cup was this past weekend, and Moose himself was in the crowd and such. The regular field, where the prices are $9,999 because he's just loading the players into the database for this year. There were some players that were in there and some that weren't. So today, with the withdrawals and the additions and such, from what I have seen, this page was not updated, but the DraftKings was. So that's why I'm using this one, and I'm gonna do my best to not talk about the salaries and such, because that's a full dedicated show to Wednesday. But that's why I'm using it tonight. So I went ahead and filtered on the last 12 months time frame, and if you haven't been here, if you haven't followed me or just coming back after the hiatus, I've started using this. That way we don't grab a lot of historical data. You kind of want to just make sure you're not necessarily playing on an even playing field, but you don't want to grab information that just isn't relevant anymore. Best example I can give you here, like Sun JM, last 36 rounds for him is early June. I'm hoping we're still live. Sorry, my software's been kind of bugging out lately. So let me know in chat comments if stuff kind of got wonky there. But so that's why I've been using this last 12-month time frame, and we're going to actually going to look at the last 6-month time frame quite a bit tonight, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. But this is just kind of an overview, the strokes gained total of the last 36 rounds of the guys that are playing. Seamus Power is your number one strokes gained total player. His win at the Barbasol had some pretty strong performances as well around that. Wins the Barbasol, but leading up to it, he had top 5 straight top 20s, 2 prior top 10s. He was playing some good golf and then broke through at the Barbasol. And then, he made the cut at the Wyndham, didn't play particularly well, and was on the more positive side of the better half of the Northern Trust. No, excuse me, I've got that wrong. He made the cut at the Northern Trust. He made the cut at the Wyndham, was pretty bad. Made the cut at the Northern Trust, but it wasn't enough for the top 70 to make it to the BMW. But you can see here, Seamus Power, he's been playing very, very well lately. The flat stick has gotten, fairly hot. He's always been a pretty good iron player. It certainly has gotten, taken a big leap for him recently. He's been always pretty good off the tee. So, no real surprise that he's number one. Or I should say, no real surprise he's up near the top. It's a little surprising that he's number one, considering you have Sam Burns, Sergio, Will Zalatoris. Although Will Zalatoris hadn't played well lately. Everybody remembers the second at the Masters, the top 10 at the PGA, the top 10 at the WG St. Jude. But, right here, Rocket Mortgage was pretty bad. U.S. Open was pretty bad. Charles Schwab was pretty bad. So it's not like he's going out and being world beaters. Not yet, anyway. I think he's going to be a star for years to come. His putting kind of holds him back a little bit. But there's some decent names here, and see Seamus Power number one is it's kind of interesting. We began last night when we kind of looked into stuff. We were looking at fast Bermuda greens, and I mentioned how I was going to try to perhaps find some comparison courses, some comp courses, because there was a note in the fact sheet about how this could be, or this looks a little bit like a Don Ross design. Well, when you filter on Don Ross here at Fantasy National, you get basically three and a half courses, what I'll say. Detroit, which is where the 3M is. East Lake, everybody knows East Lake. It's the Tour Championship. Plainfield and Sedgefield. Sedgefield is the Wyndham. So if we'll have to see and figure out if the Wyndham is a good comparison. Detroit can be. The reason why I hesitate with it a little bit is because it's a different part of the country. Now, certainly there are aspects to it that will relate to. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Get on all courses. That will relate this week to the Country Club of Jackson. But, East Lake and especially Sedgefield being in the southern part of the country, similar style weather, all that stuff. So it'll be interesting to see on some of these guys how they played at the Wyndham or have some historical performance at the Wyndham. So that's kind of where I'm going with that on the Don Ross design. Detroit Golf Club. Let's bring up the course breakdown here, and we're going to change course since we're talking about comparison courses here. Detroit Golf Club. Let's see, 1, 2. This is a par 72. Putting is the big key here. More so par 4s than par 5s. but you've got a similar approach shot distribution, plurality there. This is certainly an easy course. This is an easier course than Country Club of Jackson for sure. The accuracy is a bit, is a lot different because Country Club of Jackson is very hard to hit the fairway. This is very easy to hit the fairway. But there's some similarities here. There's some similarities, but I'm really curious to see how Sedgefield sets up. So we'll look for Sedgefield here. Again, this is the Wyndham. You've got a par 70 layout. I'm actually going to bring up another tab. Well, no. With Sedgefield being right before the FedEx Cup playoffs, it can be a tad misleading since some of the guys that are secure in their position might take the week off to gear up for the FedEx Cup playoffs. But certainly guys that are right on the cut line or perhaps around the 70 mark for the BMW, they might show up and play to improve their standing. But with Sedgefield here, you've got a major par 5 advantage here. You have to take advantage of the par 5s as they're very, very eagleable. That's not the case at Country Club of Jackson. It is a birdie fest, but there's not a lot of eagles at CC Jackson. And this course Sedgefield, generally plays a bit longer on your approach shots, as you can see here. Most of CC of Jackson comes in this range, where Sedgefield's here. Now, Sedgefield does have the majority of their par 4s are the same length that CC of Jackson is. Very similar style cut line. So Wyndham could be a little bit of a comparison course. I like it a little better than Detroit Golf Club. But this is more of a club down, hit the fairway course, as it is just a drive it, as far as you can. So I just kind of wanted to get a feel for that. For comparison courses, I'm going to remove the Don Ross design and see. Well, we've got a couple of ideas here now that maybe we can look at for Don Ross. Let's look at fast Bermuda greens. In particular, we're going to want to look in the southern part of the country, in the south, if it'll ever load. I know Austin Country Club generally is Bermuda. Well, come on. There we go. That's weird. Bermuda and fast. Well, now it's not showing any data. Thanks, Fantasy National. Thanks. Let's just try this again, shall we? All right. I'm going to bring back the last one. Sorry, technology. Gotta love it. I will come back to the last 36. Let's look at Bermuda and fast and see what courses come up here. You've got Austin Country Club, Bay Hill. Of course, there's CC of Jackson, Congaree, which was the Palmetto this past summer, East Lake, Golf Club of Houston, Harbor Town, which is the RBC Heritage, Innisbrook, I believe that's the Valspar, PJ National out west, Quail Hollow, oh gosh dang it, Robert RTG Trail, Sea Island Resort, Sedgefield, Sawgrass. Okay, so perhaps some Players Championship for putting. Definitely want to look at East Lake if any of these guys have played East Lake before, see how they did there. Definitely want to see the Wyndham. Because you don't see Detroit Golf Club up here. So there's a bit of a couple overlaps there that we'll want to look at for potential crossover success on leaderboard. Going to remove all the filters here. You'll notice that because this is only the second event of the new season, that you'll have a lot of Korn Ferry Tour graduates playing, a lot in the the swing season, the fall. I'm thinking of players, let's see, like Taylor Moore, Adam Svensson. They have basically one tournament under them, and that was the Fortinet. So their stats are going to be pretty skewed if you only keep the PGA Tour, filter on. The problem is, and I discovered this a little bit earlier today, that if you use both, then you're going to get some very, very weird results like Taylor Moore, Chad Ramey, Yeager. These are all Korn Ferry Tour graduates. Svensson, Skins, Creel. The reason that they're so high in the strokes gained total is that strokes gains works against the rest of the field. So even though these guys are good players, they deserve to be on the PGA Tour, all that, they are getting compared against their Korn Ferry Tour peers. So naturally, they're going to be a lot higher than the others, but that doesn't give you a lot of comparison for how they will match up against the actual PGA Tour players, the Sam Burns, the Matt Wallaces, the Sung Jays. So what I've done, and we'll get to the mixed condition model here a little bit later, but a lot of what I did today, I looked at just Korn Ferry, just to get a feel for these guys. I definitely brought it back into the last 6 months, because again, I'm only focusing on Korn Ferry. And I don't want to grab a lot of results from 2020 and such. I just want to see how they played this past year, what got them to graduate. So doing that, and you'll see some guys that kind of bounce between the Korn Ferry and the PGA Tour players like Vince Whaley, who was, pretty good on the PGA Tour this past year, Joseph Bramlett, etc. But I'm talking about the guys who have majority of their rounds in the Korn Ferry Tour. And again, this is no other filter, just Korn Ferry Tour. The only thing we can get from that tour is the strokes gained total. There is no strokes gained overhead stats, approach, putting, all that stuff. So there are a few underlying stats that we can look at, but this just gives you a decent idea of who played well during the course of the year at the Korn Ferry Tour level. And you can see the number one player strokes gained total was Taylor Moore. And the reason why that is so significant is, I'm going to open another page here. I'm just going to keep up the PGA Tour here. And if I sort by strokes gained total, Taylor Moore is way down here. 100. I just had him. Taylor Moore. There he is. 121st in strokes gained total. Which you'll notice he only has 10 events. And all 8 of those 10 are from way, way back. So really, he only has 2 events to be measured by. Or 2 rounds, excuse me. Not even events, rounds. Let me add the filters that I normally do for the PGA Tour. We'll go last 36. And again, you'll notice that Taylor Moore, all the way down here, he was 121. So he's 111. But you see here, he's only got two rounds. And those were the 2 rounds at the Fortinet where he didn't play well. He lost 3.6 strokes on the green, 4.6 total. It was just not a good tournament for Taylor Moore. The reason why I want to highlight this is, if you went just by PGA Tour statistics, you're not going to give Taylor Moore a second look. All the way down here at the bottom of this page, and so on. But you notice he's the number 1 player on the Korn Ferry Tour, so he clearly has game, and he should be better than 111th or whatever he is. Now, Mito Pereira is a bit of an exception. He played extremely well on the Korn Ferry Tour, and then when he has come up to the PGA Tour, he has played pretty darn well in his 22 events. Even the Fortinet, he was fantastic. Wyndham, he missed the cut. 3M, he made the cut, was positive every round. Barbasol the same. John Deere had actually, honestly, just a middling first round and then made the cut. Missed the cut at the Puerto Rico, missed the cut at the Rocket Mortgage. But when he's come up to the PGA Tour, he's played very well. It's another reason why I'm high on Mito Pereira this tournament and for tournaments to come. But I just wanted to highlight that the best example I could show you was Taylor Moore, because he's only has 2 rounds on the PGA Tour. So that's why I've really, really tried to dig into the KFT data as much as I could. And of course, you have some guys down here that have graduated, like Callum Tarrant, who's technically 30th on the Korn Ferry Tour. Novak, 37th. So yeah, you have some guys down here. Curtis Thompson graduated; he was 49th on the Korn Ferry Tour. So that's not terribly exciting. But what some of the stats we can kind of go into here, you can go birdies are better, and you can go bogeys avoided, and so on. So that birdies are better is actually a pretty good statistic, and I think it's going to play a lot this week since Country Club of Jackson's so easy that you're really going to have to you're going to go out there and shoot low score. You're going to have to. So this is a very, very good underlying stat to look at, especially this week. When the strokes gained, overhead statistics, we don't have the data for. Now, we don't have data for the opportunities gained, but anything we can grab is great on these guys that are fairly unknown. Whenever I'm doing my DFS Tactics show, I'm probably going to have 2 separate charts, to be honest with you. Do the PGA Tour and then just the Korn Ferry Tour. Just to see if we can see any kind of overlap or see any advantage, especially in pricing, that we can maybe exploit. But I really like this birdies are better gained, especially this week. I like it as a stat in general. So that's one of the underlying metrics we can see now. That unfortunately we can't really get driving distance, but we can get fairways. And if you were here last night for the initial research show, fairways and distance is one of the major factors here at CC of Jackson. Fairways are so hard to hit and guys don't really try to club down. They just try to hit the fairway because the course is long. This is not a club down layup type course like Harbor Town, for example. Harbor Town's not very long at all. I think it's less than 7,100 yards. A lot of guys take irons off the tees there for position instead of hitting drive. Guys have to hit driver here at CC of Jackson. The course is fast and firm. You just have to try to hit the fairway with your driver. So this is always good to see fairways gained here. Now it would be great to see if the distance kind of correlates with that. And the best we can do is just infer from any events that they might have played on the PGA Tour. But I just noticed as I was hovering, so you see here per drive minus 6.2, per drive minus 4.8, 9.3. I'm curious to see where Nick Hardy, who's supposedly a long drive hitter, so his is plus 7.5. So that might be something, even though it's very, very tedious, I might go through and see the per drive plus minus. Like for example, Taylor Moore's positive 3.7 there with a very good fairways hit. So that was 8. That's 28. So maybe there is a little bit of data here that's 28, 8. There you go. That's why they've got it blocked out. So you can see here per drive it's minus 6.9. Supposedly ranked 8th. Taylor Moore, Nick Hardy was per drive plus 7.5 and still ranked 8th. So that's why they've blocked it out. It's not very, say, consistent data. But looking at the per drive thing could be useful. I might dip my toes with that there. But at least we do have the fairways. So if we can find somebody who has the distance on the PGA Tour events that has been measured, plus compare with their Korn Ferry fairways, we can probably gain some inferences there on these guys, at least with the driver. Proximity, I didn't think we would have anything there. Par threes, we'll probably have just the overall. Oh no, we got all the par threes. So as I'm gonna look at the par fives because the par fives are so important here at CC of Jackson. Let's look at just the par five of the range that we're looking at. So Lipsky, Reeves, Pendrith, Tigala, these are all the guys that take advantage of the par fives of the length that CC of Jackson has. That's very good info there. Very good info to have. So I'll definitely be making 2 charts for the DFS Tactics. But again, I just wanted to highlight this during this show for going back and forth between the Korn Ferry Tour and the regular PGA Tour. We'll try to see if we can get some read between the lines there, I guess, on these Korn Ferry Tour guys. That's why I've got. That's why I hesitate to do both. I really do. I used both at the Fortinet. It was with mixed success. There were a couple of good calls. There were a couple of very, very bad ones. The guys that I was high on, and I had included their Korn Ferry Tour stats, and they just didn't. I mean, now granted, it's a small sample size. It's one tournament, but when a couple of predictions or calls are wrong, you kind of have to evaluate what you were doing. So if I keep jumping back and forth, I apologize again. I'm going to I'll try to make this fairly clear. If you see this is the Korn Ferry Tour page. If you have all the stats, it's the PGA. But to dig into this data, I think one of the best things we can look at, and we did this yesterday or last night on the initial research. Let's dig into it a little bit more. This was the Fortinet. I was doing this a little bit earlier on the Korn Ferry Tour guys. We'll get into that here in a second. Let's I apologize. Let me go into, this is the Sanderson Farms 2021. And when Sergio won last year, and we talked about last night how this was a bit of an outlier. Every single round from 2017 to 2020 was difficult to hit the fairway. So whatever the case was last year, where they had rain, perhaps they softened the course up, coming back from the pandemic. I don't really know. But this was a bit of an outlier in this specific regard, hitting the fairways. And then I mentioned it at the top of the show. Course length, Fantasy National has it 72 to 7,400. We don't really know what exactly it is. I mean, for all we know, it could be 73.99, and that falls into this bucket here. So I kind of want to see what Fantasy National has for this year. The fact sheet has 7,461 yards, so be interesting to see. Green speed was lightning last year. It's been fast every other year, but this has been pretty much the same. It's average to easy. And here's the leaderboard. Let's look at some strokes gained data. We saw that putting was so very important last year. We saw it in the course breakdown. I'm just going to kind of go through year by year here and see how much putting played a factor. Yeah, you had quite a bit of high putting stats. I mean, 7.3, 8.9, 7.8. If I sort by strokes gained putting, I mean, yeah, you've got Sam Burns, who, didn't do a fuck thing else that year, but he was making putts and he made the cut. But, I mean, 6, 11, 4, first, 11th down here. So it's definitely a factor. It was a factor in 2020. Approach, still some. I've noticed that around the green just isn't really much of a factor here at CC of Jackson, so I haven't paid any real attention to this stat. Good Lord, I just noticed Dylan Fratelli, 11 strokes gained with his approach. My God. Just think if he could have made a putt. Anyway, sorry, tangent. So putting, very important. Approach, pretty important. 2019, when Cameron Champ won, I imagine this is one of the few times he was actually positive in putting. Yeah. So just like his win this year at the Rocket Mortgage, he was just making putts because he generally doesn't make putts. You see, he's negative putting. Now, he has been putting well lately, but that's a bit misconstrued because he gained 8.5 at the 3M. I said Rocket Mortgage. I apologize. It was the 3M. Because his prowess off the tee is no joke. He hits it a mile. If he finds fairways, look out. But he was dialed in with the irons, which has been, inconsistent is what I'll say. And then he was making his putts when, you look at all these other tournaments. I mean, there's a lot of red and a lot of heavy red. So when he's good, he's very good. But yeah, you can see here, putting was a little bit less in 2019. But, I mean, look at the top here. Leaders in strokes gained putting, 7th first, 20th, 7th. You had Randolph, who was kind of middling. Meyer, 7th, 3rd, 5th. So putting, again, very, very important for the top of the leaderboard. Approach, same thing. So putting and iron play, which you can argue is every week, but it is very pronounced here at CC of Jackson. Very pronounced. You've got to be able to putt. The greens are larger, so guys are generally a little further away in their proximity. But if everybody's making greens in regulation, who's going to make the putts? We're going to look at one more year just to make sure there isn't anything crazy that we're seeing. Yeah, there is a lot of green in here, so definitely putting. Let's bring back 2021. Let's look at fairways and greens. I mentioned this last night in the sense that since the greens or the fairways, are so hard to hit, you kind of really need your combination of driving distance and fairways. And you could argue that this is just a straight up off the tee type deal, and maybe that's what I need to go instead of splitting these two out. I do like to split these out, especially for the Korn Ferry Tour guys, because we don't get the driving distance on their stats. I kind of want to see it split out because we can look at their fairways historically. We can't look at the distance. So when we start looking at, say, the regular PGA Tour model for 2022, we can get a feel for who's got the distance there when they play PGA Tour events. But coming back to this, you see distance was a bit of a factor. And these fairways, so you see here you've got, minus 10 was the top. That's pretty egregious. But even down into here, you got minus 3.1s, minus 2.8s. I want you to notice at the top of this leaderboard, there's really, in the top 16, there's really one really bad fairways at minus 4.8. I mean, really, really bad. 2.8 isn't great. 1.8 is 0.8. It wasn't preventing them from winning, but they all pretty much have positive distance. Malnati was a little bit negative in both. He made up for it in other ways. He was just on fire with the putter, which emphasizing that the putting is important. McCumber, very good distance, missed a few fairways, but generally speaking, the guys that were the best were gaining distance and gaining fairways. Look here at the distance, 6th, 6th, 6th. You had 53rd in Will Gordon, but 12th, 4th, 6th, 1st, 12th. And these driving distances are, they're not jumping off the page, but if you'll remember from the course breakdown, and I'll just bring it up here. In the course breakdown, this was pretty much average with the average tour event. It was slightly less, so 282.5 on the average tour event. This is 282.3. So there wasn't a lot of discrepancy. That's why you're seeing such low numbers. But 98.3 was quite a bit of a positive on the rest of the field, considering how even this place generally tends to be with the average tour event and distance. You can see how much the distance factored. And when you combine that with the fairways, positive fairways, you see all the high finishes. Scotty Scheffler apparently didn't play. I don't think he putt that well that week. Sergio, winner, 12th. Now Luke List missed the cut, has both, same with Hudson Swafford. But if you followed golf any at all, you'll know that Luke List just can't make a fucking putt. He just can't putt. So this event just doesn't work for him very well. But anyway, I want to emphasize this. When I finalize my mixed condition model, I might go just straight off the tee. But I definitely want to, for this data dive show, split these two out for the reasons I mentioned earlier. And I'm really only looking at these two. I'm not looking at greens, good drives, anything like that. Birdies are better gained from last year. Actually, I apologize. Let's go back to this and let's go, say, 2020. See if that was a similar story there. Maybe distance. So 28 first. You got a bunch of missed cuts here, but they were all pretty high negative in the fairways. 61st, 3rd, 45th. Okay, there's a bit of correlation here. Not as strong, clearly, as 2020. It's always good to see. I mean, Cameron Champ, 138, the next is 67. That's quite a discrepancy. Let's look at 2019, the year Cameron Champ won it, 184. So fairways weren't even that much for the top drop. Well, I shouldn't say that. Let's see, fairways. He was barely under average and gained a bunch of fairways. Barely under average for the fairways, gained a lot of distance. Positives. Not as strong of a correlation there. And then we'll look at 2018 lastly, just to make sure. This is your Ryan Armour one. Yeah, he didn't have any distance and won it. Interesting, he just hit every single green in regulation apparently. Hadley, there's Randolph. Okay, so 2020 there was a pretty strong correlation. Perhaps it's not as strong as I originally thought. I kind of want to see just this off the tee metric. So here's 2018 off the tee. Okay, barely negative. Still not a whole lot of correlation there. Let's look at 2019 strokes gained. Okay, much more pronounced here for off the tee. Much more. Look at these high finishes and a lot of strokes gained off the tee. 2020 strokes gained. Okay. It's much more so the putting and the approach. That's for sure. So interesting there. I might have been a little bit off last night, and that's why we did really dig into the data. I have no qualms admitting that sometimes I get it wrong. That's why you research, and then that's why you really dig into it. So I'm definitely going to look at the distance in the fairways, but perhaps it's not as strong of a correlation as I thought. Let's go back here. Well, shoot. How far back do I need to go? That's the leaderboard. Sanderson Farms. Nope. Okay, we'll just stay here at the 2021. Let's see. What's the next thing I kind of want to do? Speaking to the Korn Ferry Tour guys, since they only have one event, honestly, I'm just going to go back to the home leaderboard, Moose and Onyx. There it is. There we go. Apologies for all the clicking and the flashing. Speaking to the Korn Ferry Tour guys, this is the Fortinet from 2 weeks ago. And again, I really wanted to see how they played, fairways and greens, so this distance and fairways. get a feel for. I had that over here. Well, stupid. Just get a feel for how they generally played. Now, this isn't going to be a great comparison because the Fortinet is on bent greens. This is Bermuda, but again, it's just an overall feel for these guys. So you got Mito, again, who I'm very high on. He was solo third. Let's look at John Augustine. Played very well, sixth. There's Lipsky, tied for 22nd. Vanderwalt, tied for 22nd. Somebody I really like this week as well. Sig, 30th. Hardy, 36th. So there's some guys here that made the cut, played pretty darn well. Looks like a lot of it was off the tee for Nick Hardy. Didn't make any putts. He's good with his irons. That's what I like to see on that. Sig, pretty well rounded overall. Okay. Well rounded. I don't know how much the around the green's going to play this week. If that's indeed his strength, then that might be something to note. Maybe this isn't Grayson Sig's week. Vanderwalt, good putting. Good approach, good tee. All right, that's somebody who I can probably narrow in on this week. All right, things that are playing well: approach, putting. Again, we'll have to see. I wonder if he has. Oh, look at that! Now, don't get terribly excited. Remember, you have to take into account what your y-axis here. This isn't even a tenth of a point, but it is his best surface, so that's something to go on. He's been red hot with the putter lately. The last time he was on the PGA Tour before the Fortinet was last November at the Houston Open and put the lights out there. Let's take a look. Houston Open. I wonder if they are bent or Bermuda. It doesn't say. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. That's some positivity, positive vibes there for Vanderwalt. Lipsky, great putting. Barely under average off the tee. There's another name to consider. Again, I'm just doing this for the Korn Ferry Tour guys. Augustine, very well rounded all the way. Look at the irons. Holy smokes. We might have Corey Connors here with that. And if he makes some putts, look out. And then there's Mito. Mito might be my man crush for this year. You're going to get tired of me saying Mito, but this guy can play. So interesting to see there for the strokes gained. I'm going to use the specifics when I break down over here. So this is the Fortinet. This is the distance in the fairways. Mito, positive in both. Augustine, positive in both. Lipsky was positive in both. Now, Vanderwalt's not a long hitter, but he certainly hits the fairways. Something to keep in mind for this week. Sig, same thing. Although he's a little bit longer than Vanderwalt. Hardy. So I thought Hardy was a bigger hitter. He was not very good that week. This is why you have to do a lot of research on these Korn Ferry Tour guys because, one bad tournament can really skew their stats when they don't have a lot of PGA Tour rounds. Let's look at birdies and bogeys gained. Mito was okay. Augustine was up there. There's Vanderwalt. There's Mito, Lipsky. So same names kind of popping up. Last thing I want to look at from the Fortinet this 2 weeks ago was the par 5 efficiency and of the length. So Mito, pretty darn good. Augustine was not very good from that length. Lipsky, Vanderwalt was the same. Sig was good. Hardy was meh. So, okay. Again, it's one tournament. You don't want to, write these people off as just saying, well, John Augustine can't play par fives, and you don't want to build that narrative. But with little data we have on these Corn Ferry guys, you got to grab as much as you can, and then, get your inferences from there. So I'm gonna close that one out. I might keep this one up, but we're gonna kind of jump back and forth here now on the from the regular PGA Tour and the Corn Ferry guys. We looked at putting last night. We also looked at approach. Let's start filtering in on some of this stuff. Let's see on easy courses. Your strokes gained total, guys, for the last. Let's narrow it down to last 6 months. Who's played well on easy courses? And you see here, 36 is just way too many rounds. I mean, the most anybody has is 18. That's just back to July. Maybe 12 months is better. Let's see, 36, 34. Okay, this will be okay. For the last 36 rounds on easy courses, you got Patton Kazire is your number one. Let me quickly make sure I don't have any other. Yep. So Patton Kazire, Seamus Power, Sungjae, Sergio, and Connors. Joel Damon, Sam Burns, Sabatini, Norlander, and Siwoo. Interesting. Very interesting. Guys, again, if you're in chat, let me know what you're wanting to see. I'm just kind of trying to go through my thought process here. I did this a little bit earlier today, so I'm kind of re-going through my process with you all. I haven't been talking about Sportsbook Odds. If you'd like me to put out some odds there for you, I will. I do know that Sam Burns is the favorite at 14-1. And I went ahead and fired on that. Anytime you can get a favorite at 14-1, you really got to consider it, especially since we'll see at the end of the show in the mixed condition model, he actually rated number 1 for me. So if I got my number 1 player and he's the tournament favorite at 14-1, I just fired on it. Seamus Power at the Barbasol last year was 16-1. I kind of fired on that, just on the sense that he's a favorite at 16-1. It's very rare that you get a favorite of a golf tournament more than, say, 10 or 11-1. So when that happens, you really got to consider it. And the fact that Sam Burns rated so well, I just went ahead and fired on the 14. But anyway, so there's the strokes gained total leaders for easy courses. Just to kind of take a look who hits their approaches on easy courses. Willie Z, Keegan, Reevy, Brainlet, ZJ, Norlander. Not a lot of overlap, it doesn't appear. Not a ton. Sungjae, maybe? Nope. He wasn't up there. Connors, Damon. I don't recognize any of these guys. So, approach doesn't seem to be the factor on these easy courses for these guys. Interesting. Maybe it's off the tee. Sergio, Connors, him again. Brender's, Hoffman, Damon, Burns. Okay, so it is off the tee. This is where guys are gaining their advantage when they're playing easy rounds, is off the tee. Good to know. Very good to know. We're going to remove that filter, and let's look at long courses. Again, if this isn't over 7,400, that's why I really want to see what Fantasy National does. There's this in-tournament stats tab here that you can look at stats live through the tournament. So that's really handy, especially if you're playing showdowns or making mid-tournament wagers on sports books. But let's look at long courses here. What's the top amount of rounds? 25. So just because there's only Corey Connors has 25, everybody else is under 24. I'm actually going to filter it there. Take one round off of Corey Connors. So on these long courses, who's the best? Will Z, Hoffman, Connors, Griot, List, Putnam. There's a name for you, Putnam. Keegan Bradley, Matt Wallace, Chris Kirk, and Gary Woodland. Let's see how they're doing it. Off the tee. Mitchell, List, Hagee, there's Connors, Sergio, Wise, M, Streelman, Sig, and Shank. Interesting. Grayson Sig. And this is the PGA Tour tab, not the Korn Ferry. So he's got 10 rounds where it was considered long, over 7,400. You got the Valero Texas Open, the Punta Cana, and the Puerto Rico. And all 4 of the measured rounds there, he was above the field and off the tee. Very interesting. So, because I see that, let's go look here. We are looking at Grayson Sig. Let's look at long courses. And again, this isn't going to be a great comparison because we don't have straight off the tee. But on long courses, Grayson Sig is actually not up there. So, is this an outlier? Is this a fact that we don't have enough data? It's interesting. I mean, this is why you go through this. Very interesting. All right. I'm going to remove that filter. First game total. Let's... Oh, shoot. Did I just do it? No. All right. Where is he on the strokes gained total? Oh. Strokes gained total, 38th. Very interesting. So he wasn't very high on the Korn Ferry Tour, but he's sitting at 38th on this over 7,400 total, and he's 9th off the tee. 35th with approach. Now he's not making putts. Let's check out Grayson Sig here. His one event, it looks like on Bermuda, didn't go well. Clearly not a very good putter, at least in the measured rounds of PGA Tour. Was a little positive in the Fortinet. The Barbasol was good, but then U.S. Open again. He's in the U.S. Open as a Korn Ferry Tour guy. That says something. It was bad. Texas Open was bad. U.S. Open. So this guy's been in some big tournaments in the U.S. Opens. All right. Okay. Might be a name to look out for, Grayson Sig. So we still have, make sure that, yep, over 7,400. Let's see some overlap if we have any. Connors, he's doing a little bit with off the tee. List was high up there on off the tee. Connors, Hoffman, was he up there? Yeah, Hoffman. So there you go. Okay. Looking at approach, Neesmith, Connors, Hoffman again, Griot, Hoagie, Cam Davis. Not a lot of overlap there. All right, very interesting. So that was the that was the long course. That was the easy relative to par. I mentioned how we might want to look at Sedgefield, the Wyndham. So let's just filter on Sedgefield and see if this truly is a Don Ross type comparison course. This is the one thing about daggone Fantasy National I don't like. If you're imprecise at all on this, there we go. Sedgefield. Let's just see who plays Sedgefield the best. Siwoo, Sloan, Streelman. I'm gonna go with all records just to see. So some guys have played this quite a bit. Let's see how far back this goes. 2012. Good Lord, I don't want to go back that far. What do we want to say? Let's just do 2 years. Make it this easy. Let's do 2 years of the past Wyndhams and see if there's some overlap here. Strokes gained total. Siwoo, Denny McCarthy, Sung Jae's been popping. Sam Burns pops. That's really about it. Interesting. That's really about it. Will Z. So, all right. Maybe a little bit. Last one I'm going to do is Eastlake. And I doubt a lot of these guys have data at Eastlake. But it is it is a comp course for sure. Let's look at Eastlake. Last 2 years. So Sam Burns was at Munoz, Hughes, Garcia. Hughes was there in 2020. Sung Jae, Griffin. Yeah. So just not enough data for Eastlake. But certainly Sedgefield was interesting to see. There wasn't a lot of overlap there. That's what I'll tell you. All right. Again, guys, if you're in chat or in the comments below, what are you wanting to see? Or reach out to me, comments or message on social media. What do you want to see? What are you looking at? All that good stuff. I'm going to go into now my mixed condition that I was working on a little bit today. It's up here. And let me explain why I have the stats that I do. Strokes gained total, we looked at a little bit for easy courses, easy to par courses. Set that at 10. Strokes gained total on over 7,400. I've only got that at 5 because I don't know, definitely that this course is going to set up for over 7,400. So I didn't want to put too much emphasis on it, but I definitely want to see it. Who's just been hitting approach shots their best? If you followed me for any time, you know that I much prefer iron type players than I am, putters. To me, putting is a fickle statistic. It's volatile. Guys can, Cameron Champ, 8.5 strokes, he's going to win. A lot of times he's bad. So it's hard to predict week to week. You just have to kind of get a gauge if a guy likes the speed of the greens or the type of surface. Which reminds me, I'm going to check one player for you all here real quick that I thought was an interesting case. But anyway, I much prefer iron players. That being said, there's no denying how important putting is here. So I went with the last 24 rounds on fast Bermuda greens. I can guarantee you these greens are going to be fast. I can't guarantee that they're lightning, so I only put it at fast. Birdies are better on easy courses. This is the metric that I use to hit Cam Davis at the Rocket Mortgage. When the course is easy, you have to give yourself chances. And who does that the best on easy courses? So I really wanted to hammer that statistic there. This is that off the tee. Sorry, I kind of spoiled who was number one. This is that off the tee kind of metric. I wanted to separate it out, especially for the Korn Ferry Tour guys. Distance and fairways, I put them both at 10%. On the difficult to hit fairways, because these fairways are difficult to hit traditionally. There's certainly an argument that I need to take one, both, or combine these two. So I'll be doing that during the week. Lastly, strokes gained par 5. The easy course par 5s, I want to see who plays those fairly well just as an overall. But we saw that there was quite a bit of correlation on the distance of par 5s that guys did well. So I moved that to 10%. I didn't put any easy condition or long course condition. I just wanted to see who plays this length of par 5 the best in the this past year or so. So there's the metrics that I use, the percentages, why, and all that stuff. As I told you, Sam Burns is my number one. Pretty clear. He's one of the best players in the field. No real bad statistics except for fairways gained. And as this course is going to be hard to hit fairways anyway, the fact that he's such a good putter in the past 24 rounds on fast Bermuda, he's hitting his irons well, plays par 5s well. There's a lot to like for Sam Burns. Tringali, Zalatoris, Connors, and Mito Pereira are my top 5. Sungjae, Ortiz, Hoffman, Woodland, and Joseph Bramlett round out my top 10. With that being said, this is filtered only on PGA Tour statistics. So when you see that, you'll see somebody like Taylor Moore is rated, 104th in my rankings. That's because he has two rounds, not even events, 2 rounds on the PGA Tour, and they were pretty shitty. Now, with that, I would move Taylor Moore up quite a bit in my rankings. As we saw, he is the number one strokes gained total player on the Korn Ferry Tour. So clearly he can play. You know, the stats that weren't good for him, he was 106 maybe? He was around here, 104. So we're not going to get the putting statistics. We're just not. And if it says 54th, but anybody who doesn't have statistics is 54th. So they just black it out because there's nothing there. Iron play, we can kind of get some inferences on that. Birdies are better are going to be hard to get. Oh no, excuse me, no they're not. We can look straight for birdies are better. Birdies are better. Taylor Moore, number one. So even though he doesn't have a data in here, we know that he was good on the PGA or on the Korn Ferry Tour, excuse me. So, how much of a bump you give him, you got to guess that correctly. Because I can't do it for you. I certainly have my guess. I would give him a decently significant bump. But you don't want to overreact either. But he's number one in birdies are better gained on the Korn Ferry Tour. So it's something. Like he has all red statistics here. Strokes gained total on easy to par courses. We can take a look at that. On at least for a easy course thing. So he was number one on total in the last 36 rounds. If you do easy, scoring relative to par, easy, Taylor Moore was still number one. So again, he's going to be better than this 104th is my point here. In this statistical model, in this data model, the Korn Ferry guys are significantly downgraded. Unless somebody like Mito Pereira, who has played quite a few rounds, enough rounds to gather good data on him and has played well. Somebody like Taylor Pendrith, he's played enough on the PGA Tour, Fortinet, Barbasol. He did miss the cut at the U.S. Open, but played, he was actually above average. He played the U.S. Open in the fall. That was a while ago, but he's played well when he's come up and played. So Taylor Pendrith is somebody who might be slightly downgraded, but not necessarily to the level of someone like Taylor Moore. Like Callum Tarrant, I was pretty wrong on him at the Fortinet. I was pretty high on him just because I had included, Korn Ferry and PGA Tour stats. But when you look, the round he had at the Fortinet the tournament he had was pretty darn bad, and that was really the only tournament except for the U.S. Open that he had played. But you see here, there's some pretty high finishes up here on the Korn Ferry Tour. So clearly he can play. Just what you're able to grab on these Korn Ferry Tour guys. I try. I'll go through just kind of a quick rundown for this week on these guys. I can do that via this. Taylor Pendrith, yeah, he's okay for this week. I like him. Speaking of, let me bring up the lines here. I'm just going for looking at these Korn Ferry Tour guys. Mito Pereira's 28-1. I fired it off. I wasn't happy about it. I was really hoping for a 35, a 40. I'm just really high on Mito Pereira this week. You see he's fifth in my statistical model. 28-1. Yeah, that's decent value. I was hoping for more, but yeah. So Pereira. Let's see other Korn Ferry Tour guys. Taylor Pendrith at 50. I didn't make the bet, but I can understand it if you feel like the success is going to continue. And the little bit he's come up to the PGA Tour. You can see here his approach hasn't been good, but that's mainly in one tournament there. And the fact that he even was positive at the U.S. Open this year at at Torrey Pines. I mean, I'll accept that. That was a brutal course. So Pendrith at 50. Let's see. Anybody else here? Chad Ramey, Grayson Sigg, 65-1. Taylor Moore, 70-1. I like Taylor Moore quite a bit. Like I said, he's so down in my model just because he doesn't have any rounds. And the 2 rounds he does have, he played bad. It happens. Jaeger at 80. Augustine at 100. So, yeah. Hopefully by the DFS Tactics show, we'll get some more. We'll shine a light on some of these statistics, and if not for sportsbook betting, definitely for your DFS plays. This is where you're going to get your advantage if you know as much as you can on these Corn Ferry guys. For now, and when golf, when prime golf season starts rolling around in February and such, when people start getting back into golf, the more you pay attention now in the fall, the more information you'll have to gain that much more of an advantage when a lot of people start to play. But for now, your advantage is trying to figure out as much of these Corn Ferry Tour guys as you can. And you're going to get them wrong. You're going to get some of them wrong. It's just the way it is. You're taking... I don't want to say you're making complete dart throws. There should be a little bit of some thought process, some analysis into it, but you're going to be wrong until you figure out, how these guys play on certain courses, what their strengths are, and all that stuff. And that's what I'm hopefully here to help you all out with. And I'm going to get some wrong, and when I do, feel free to jump in chat. Tell me how much of a dumbass I am. You're not going to tell me anything I don't know. But like I said, hopefully I'm able to give you some amount of insight, because I want you all to win. I want you all to win. I really do. It brings me happiness. I enjoy doing this whenever I'm hearing about your all success. Won't get too sentimental on beyond that, but I do want to hear about your all success. With that, I believe that's going to be the Data Dive show for this year's the 2022 Sanderson Farms. Make sure to tune in Wednesday when we go into the DFS Tactics. You see the prices here. I'll really start breaking that down. I might do a little segment on just the Corn Ferry guys if you want, or if you want the usual kind of rundown by price board. I'll obviously have the projected ownerships according to Fantasy National, my fades, my pivots, and all that stuff. So for any bets you make at the Sanderson Farms this week, for all your DFS contests that you enter from now until Wednesday when I see you again, may all your bets be profitable.